Welcome to a noob's guide to GROM the Paunch. This is GROM, a goblin with a childhood obesity issue that led to chronic bullying and an unfortunate nickname that followed him into adulthood, which led to poor dietary habits and misplaced anger issues that have perpetuated a cycle of violence. Or he's just Australian. Take your pick. The only Greenskin to ever penetrate the elf home of Ulthuan, but after a defeat at the hands of Eltharion, the Warden of Tor-Yvresse, GROM is spoiling for a rematch, and this time, it's personal. GROM the Paunch is one of two legendary lords in the WARDEN and the PAUNCH DLC for Total War Warhammer 2, also called the expansion that everyone saw coming. Originally, this guide was going to be all Mad Max references, but it turns out CA beat me to the punch on this and already spotted his low-hanging fruit, which is funny since this love child of Jabba the Hutt in Jim Broadbent hasn't seen his own twig and berries since Skinamax was still a thing. Instead, GROM keeps underlings around now to look at his low-hanging fruit for him, who ensure us that his is the largest and greatest of all green foreskins. A bloated legend, GROM is the goblin Elvis, and his campaign revolves around the greater good of feeding and buffing his adoring pint-sized legion, because GROM was once a normal goblin just like them, picked, flicked, and kicked by the orcs of his tribe, until one day they got bored, and as everyone who has ever been on a playground will tell you, nothing is more terrifying than a bored, intellectually stunted bully. So these orcs decided to have an eating contest. Not for them, the goblins, who would be forced to eat raw troll meat, which sounds harmless until you realize that troll tissue regenerates, and they can grow back even missing limbs like some sort of super lizard. And when a goblin is forced to eat this meat, it continues to grow inside them. And the results are either Stand By Me's pie eating contest or Monty Python's Mr. Creosote. The orcs have a good laugh either way, but GROM was blessed with a cast iron stomach by the greenskin god Mork, because instead of an agonizing death, it sparked what would become known in goblin legend as the Battle of the Belly. After swelling up like a bag of popcorn, GROM's digestive tract went on the offensive, absorbing the troll meat so that he grew to a tremendous size, the largest of any goblin in history. And now he even possesses some of the same regenerative abilities as a troll, making him an absurdly spherical Wolverine with awkwardly placed nipple piercings. Waddling his way to the top of the Broken Axe tribe, GROM spent years puttering around the Badlands and World's Edge Mountains, where goblins would travel from far and wide to marvel at his prodigious nature. But it wasn't until he single-handedly defeated an orc war boss that his wah truly began. But there was no one to sing his praises. Knackered from the fight, as it required him to walk more than 5 steps, GROM flopped down to the ground to rest, and accidentally sat directly on a night goblin. But miraculously, instead of another green stain on his backside, GROM found the goblin was still alive and only partially pancake-shaped. Taking it as another sign from Mork, the night goblin Niblet was promoted to carry GROM's lucky banner, which even appears in-game as a quest item that gives increased odds of finding magic items as well as defensive buffs, since what could be more lucky than not dying. But realizing that cardio would not be in his future, GROM resorted to the last bastion of Walmart shoppers, the motorized scooter, drawn here by 3 wolves who could set endurance records on the Iditarod, who pull a chariot held together by iron rebar and flex tape. With his gravity now measured in solars, other tribes flocked to his banner, and those who flocked too slowly found themselves crushed beneath GROM's widening girth, which ties into the game rather well, as greenskin tribes can confederate into GROM's broken axes after you defeat their leaders in combat, since there's nothing they love more than a good crumpin'. But for the goblins and orcs under him, GROM could do no wrong. Raiding, looting, raising, and punting stunties only bloated his reputation. And it's this sort of behavior that leads to a proper WA. And GROM's DLC also introduced new WA mechanics, which besides giving you powerful buffs and reputation growth, you can call a proper WA and set out to conquer a marked settlement with a double-sized army, which naturally recruits to you as GROM rolls his way across the world. GROM's original WA made a grand tour of the old world, but after countless victories, he began to worry that there weren't any proper good fights left in it, and it was from atop a pile of looted gold that GROM first got word of the greater plans Mork had in store for him, as his shaman, Old Blacktooth, delivered the prophecy.
Take to the sea, Gork and Mork need new lands to crush.
So GROM rounded up some village people for a late-night snack and set out to join the Navy, leaving behind unpillaged cities, a confused but grateful empire, and a lingering smell of underboob sweat. On scavenged boats, they set out to Ulthuan, half drowned on arrival from incompetent shipbuilding and OSHA violations. Yet somehow this rolling shambles still made landfall in Yvresse, whose mist-crowded shores look remarkably like Washington State, except with less werewolves and sparkle vampires. Now on the elfin homeland, Grom's shaman, Old Blacktooth, began to go off the rails, instructing the Wa to topple ancient waystones so that the elves wouldn't just be beaten, but buried under the ocean. Which is probably why GROM also starts the campaign with a huge penalty to High Elf relations, because some people just can't take a joke. Cue the arrival of Eltharion the Grim on the back of a winged griffin, who swooped in and cut off Old Blacktooth's head. But GROM didn't die with him. His army broken, he retreated in disgust, but to where, no one knew. Until now. It turns out GROM feels revenge is a dish best served warm, gooey, and with suspicious ingredients, because he spent the last 100 years cooking up a Paula Deen-sized portion of payback. GROM's unique mechanic for this DLC is GROM's Cauldron, a giant cooking pot where you combine various bits and bobs into a culinary abomination. And since GROM is apparently a green Guy Fieri, he knows that any good meal is based on the 5 basic food groups: red meat, poultry, fish, mushrooms, and a sauce to drown it all in. You'll need to bash and loot your way around the world to collect ingredients to toss into your pot. Phoenix Claws require you to have beaten a High Elf Phoenix in battle. Stunty Ale is acquired after raiding a dwarf stronghold, and Centigore Milk is... Mercifully, once you find an ingredient, it's permanently unlocked, and the buffs from any cooked dishes last for 15 turns, and change based on the ingredients used. Some are unit-specific and allow things like explosive arrows, and some only affect GROM, though all of them are as awesome as a backflip at a monster truck rally. Assisting in your quest for more Michelin stars is the Troll Hag Food Merchant, who spawns on the map every few turns. This fishy-smelling Honey Boo Boo reject may look harsh, but clicking gently on her blue spot opens her up for business. There you'll get 4 options: buy whatever random ingredient she found in her underboob, rob her blind by stealing her scrap and gold, let her buff you with a random recipe, which is especially useful early game when you haven't unlocked much yet, and the Iron Chef Throwdown, where you'll take a bite out of a giant pepper and challenge the hag to a cook-off, which is actually a vague word puzzle where you need to cook a certain dish to complete the mission. But with 11 possible recipes as answers, most of which you won't actually have unlocked yet, you'll likely fare as well in this cooking challenge as Disney's Black Cauldron. But if you do manage to divine the dish the hag wants to eat, you'll be rewarded by unlocking a new ingredient slot for your cauldron, so you can toss in an extra ingredient and add even more bonuses to your recipes. Beat her cooking challenge again to unlock a 4th slot, and turn GROM into an all-you-can-eat buffet of unstoppability. These culinary concoctions are the driving force of GROM's campaign, and when you've found 12 of the 15 possible recipes, the disembodied head of your old advisor Blacktooth will tell you that it's finally time to go show High Elf Batman who's the real boss. And you'll unlock a final scripted quest battle against Eltharion, where you siege Tor Yvresse once again. At least that's how it works in GROM's Vortex campaign, where GROM starts in the Southlands and fights his way north through no less than Emmerich, Cetra, and Rapunce before taking to the waves and invading Ulthuan. A Mortal Empire campaign begins GROM in a new province smack in the center of Paravon, the aptly named Massive Orcal, and has him play more like his historic invasion route. But regardless, GROM's ultimate objective is still to wipe Eltharion and Tor Yvresse from the map. Helping you at the start of each new campaign will be one of every new unit in this DLC, because you didn't pay $9 to not play with them. First up is the giant River Troll Hag, a hero unit with access to death magic. Yours is named Da Fishy Tittlemuncha, which is right up there with Bodie McBoatface for originality. Though really, there's only so many names that fit large women who smell of fish and have breasts that could double as door knockers. But you have to love that someone at CA took the time to model her butt crack. I mean, there's no way your average person even looks at this, and you just know that those skull pasties stuck on the front of her boobs were added at the last second after complaints of spontaneous nosebleeds around the office. Because whoever made this model wanted you to know that sometimes the thicker the cushion, the better the pushin'. River trolls are the unfortunate, less exciting male version, who reek like a porta potty in the summer heat and give off a constant debuff to melee attack because nobody wants to get close enough to stab one, and they're inspired by sea urchins. Bet you couldn't tell. Really, they're a tiered upgrade from regular trolls who upgrade into something even more useful. Stone trolls, who get armor piercing and come with solid defensive stats, but are unfortunately also low-effort reskins on CA's part. Others have pointed out that Games Workshop did once release a more visually distinct version, but if you bring that model into the game, the nose has to come with 3 black lines just to pass Japanese censorship laws. So I suppose CA worked it as best they could, and then it blew up in their faces anyway. Snotling pump wagons benefit from all GROM's chariot buffs, and offer a cheap and expendable early game unit with armor piercing and anti-infantry traits, so you can roll them into a blob of high elves and forget they exist. They also come in regular, Da Vinci, and Steamroller flavors, each of which is moderately better than the one before it, but since each is driven by a 13-year-old who hasn't discovered face washing yet, you won't ever be looking at them close enough to actually tell them apart. Rogue idols are literal living piles of shit and shale, hugely expensive, lumbering monstrosities dedicated to the gods Mork and Gork, who somehow become even more deadly as they get injured. If you see one in battle, pray it's on your side. And if not, well, I hope you brought an 80s action movie level of ammunition with you to the fight. All of these units bring some obvious cool factor, but GROM's skills focus on buffing goblins and chariots, so the trolls in particular feel a bit wasted on him, though they're always welcome additions to other Greenskin campaigns. And GROM's unique skill line has lackluster buffs to his own fighting abilities, because GROM's campaign is really about force-feeding a tide of angry green imps enough V8 go juice that they'll roll over the elves in an angry green tide, making engine noises with their mouths the whole time. Really, if you wanted to see an overweight working-class Londoner and his midget friend traverse around the world in search of culinary delights, watch An Idiot Abroad, because GROM the Paunch is his immensity, his enormity, his gargantuity, and he's ready to roll his girth across the world. Thanks for watching this Noob's Guide to GROM the Paunch, and if you enjoyed this video, subscribe for more, or join the channel to support it, or don't. 3/4 of you are under 35 and 98% are male, so you'd honestly be better off by following a cooking channel.